I am bringing you 4 Dynasty players that are rising up my rankings right now and that you should be taking advantage of and are not really being represented in the right way, in my opinion, in the community rankings and in mock drafts or your real Dynasty startups. So once again, 4 players that I believe that you should be looking out and that are rising in my Dynasty rankings as we speak. And before we get into it, go to flockfantasy.com/land, the best place to support what Zach and I are doing here at DynastyLand. You get so much at this website here. You get our rankings, our bonus content, and our articles, not only from Zach and myself, but all the other content creators on there. We just announced Dynasty/Fantasy domain are joining the team, which is awesome. Some great guys over there. So once again, flockfantasy.com/land. You get so much from us, but all the other content creators when signing up using promo code LAND, getting 30% off. So let's get straight into the video. I'm bringing you one player at each position here: quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end, which kind of gives you a little bit of variety of what I'm thinking about in my rankings here. So my first player, to start off with the quarterback position, and that is Tua Tags, currently going in the community as a QB 14, and he's my QB 12, and he used to be my QB 15, so he did rise up 3 spots literally in the past 48 hours. Because when we were doing our top 24 quarterback video and I was talking about Tua, I was like, dang, he should really be higher. He should be higher than where I have him right now, and maybe even considering him over some of these rookies that I have. And that's exactly what I did. I moved him up once again 3 spots, put him up some of these rookies, and you can definitely go check that out on the site. That should be updated and live now. But if not, comment down below and I can give you my list. Once again, QB 12 for Tua Tags, and I just really want to give you this thought process that I have about Tua and why I think we really should be seeing him in an elite, mindset and an elite quarterback out of all of these quarterbacks that we have right now. And yes, let's address the elephant in the room. He has concussion issues, without a doubt. But when you are drafting your dynasty team and when you're drafting any player on your roster, you're not necessarily worried about that. When CMC was, considered injury prone, 2-3 years ago, you were probably still drafting him in the 2nd round in your dynasty startups or the 3rd round in your dynasty startup with no hesitation because you knew the ceiling. And we saw the ceiling with Tua this past year. We saw what he could have been, what he was doing on this team. So look, I know every situation's different. I know every position is different. We're not questioning Breece Hall. We're still drafting him early. We didn't question Saquon Barkley. We're still drafting him early when he tore his ACL. Once again, every position and every injury is different. But I think we are just overlooking Tua's situation because he is in a phenomenal situation on one of the best offenses in the NFL. And once again, I do believe he has league-winning upside. He is an elite quarterback in my eyes, and I think we need to put him in that. I think he is one of the last elite quarterbacks that you can get in the 2nd round. In my opinion, he should be going in the 2nd round now of your dynasty startups when you're doing your drafts. So what's incredible about Tua is his efficiency, and I think that's what a lot of people don't necessarily see. That's what the concussions has really, overshadowed and not really shown the community and show the community what he was doing throughout his tenure last year, right? Tua was one of the most efficient quarterbacks, and look, I can definitely highlight tell you each and every position, but the ones that I really want to tell you are the ones that I have highlighted here. First in yards per attempt, first in adjusted yards per attempt, first in deep ball completion, first in red zone completion, red zone accuracy, 3rd in QBR, 3rd in air yards per attempt. Tua was having a phenomenal season last year. He was on pace for something incredible. He was on pace for 5,200 yards. That was the same as Patrick Mahomes last year. And if we had played a full season without the concussion hindrances and everything else that kind of came about, we probably would have seen Tua finish within the top 5 to top 8 quarterback finishes this past year, and we would be having a different conversation about Tua Tags. And he right now is going at the end of the 3rd. Even sometimes you see him fall into the late 4th of your dynasty starters. You can get him as your QB2. I think this is phenomenal value right now if you are doing a dynasty startups, or even if somebody is trying to sell Tua right now. This could be a good value. And once again, I kind of hit it on this earlier, but he is on one of the best offenses. He has one of the best wide receiver duos in the National Football League with, you know, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Not only one of the best, but one of the fastest, you know, wide receiver duos in the league, one of the fastest teams in the league, and that only gets technically better with Devon, that is a speedster in the backfield that can catch passes as well. So it's only going to increase going into the 2023 season when he's healthy and plays a full season. And look, once again, the first half of the season, weeks 1 to 4, he was on pace for 5,200 yards. Once again, that was just on par with Patrick Mahomes. The second half of the season, after those 2 concussions, a phenomenal start. The next 4 games, week 7 and 10, he once again still on pace for 5,200 yards, over 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 23.2 fantasy points. And then after that, you know, that's when he was still struggling with concussions. And you know, according to the doctors, he was playing throughout the concussions until the rest of the season. That's where you kind of saw him fall off. It's not necessarily Tua, in my opinion, that fell off. I think it was the concussions that really hindered him. And look, this may be a risky play, but I think if you hit on this, just like maybe you have taken the chance on Trey Lance, maybe you've taken the chance on whatever quarterback, whatever positional chance that you have taken, I think Tua can really return value here. And even if he finishes as a top 12 quarterback, that is still a good finish than what we saw this past year. And then we can see him getting a 2-year contract extension still, again, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So once again, he is my QB 12 in the community, the QB 14, and you should be definitely going out and trying to draft Tua tags in your dynasty leagues. My second player at the running back position that is rising in my rankings, and that is Antonio Gibson, currently running back 32 in the community. My RB was my RB 38. Now he is my RB 31, so he has risen significantly in my rankings, and maybe I'm seeing this a little bit more eye to eye in the community, but still not really being represented in the same way in dynasty startups or in mock drafts, and even in underdog and best ball, we don't really see him going that high as well. So look, once again, Antonio Gibson, RB 32 in the community, my RB 31 now. One of the things I really want to hit on Antonio Gibson is his pass catching opportunities, and that's exactly what we saw this past year from Antonio Gibson. Caught 46 out of 58 targets in the air. He did miss 1 game, but was averaging 3.1 targets, or 3.9 targets, almost 4 targets this past year in the air. Got over 200 attempts on the ground. Obviously, Brian Robinson misses the first 5 games of the season, and we saw him really take over that role. You know, it was really shaky for Antonio Gibson for the first half of the season, not really knowing if he was even going to make this team, if he was even going to have the opportunity when Brian Robinson was really taking off during preseason. And then Brian Robinson has an incident. He gets shot. It's unfortunate. And then Antonio Gibson has a new life, a revitalization, and now he's here. Now we're talking about Antonio Gibson as a new option because of the new offensive coordinator that comes in from the Kansas City Chiefs and Eric Bieniemy. And what does that mean? We saw the success in the running back position last year with Jarrett McKinnon, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first half of the season, even with Isaiah Pacheco this past year, all in Kansas City. And what's really exciting about that is that Antonio Gibson, I think we can all say, is a lot more talented, you know, compared to Jet, compared to Clyde, even though these guys were drafted all in different areas. But Antonio Gibson knows how to play the wide receiver position. Coming out of college, was a wide receiver, transitions to a running back in the NFL. That's his bread and butter. That's where he makes his money. That's how he can contribute to this team. And maybe finally Ron Rivera can see that. And maybe that's exactly what Eric Bieniemy is going to be saying, hey, look at this talent that we have. Antonio Gibson, a quick guy that can catch the ball and get creative in space and do some damage. And that's exactly what we potentially could be seeing with Eric Bieniemy and Sam Howell, who is technically a rookie quarterback, hasn't really played a full season, only played 1 game last year, week 18. And maybe he's going to be checking down a lot more because he has to get creative. He has to, you know, instill this confidence in Sam Howell, which maybe means checking down to Antonio Gibson. And I think this may be where the community is seeing. This is maybe what I'm seeing. I think he could even be rising in a 1 year standpoint, let's say you're in a win now opportunity, maybe you go out and get Antonio Gibson, or maybe in your redraft leagues a little bit different, but Antonio Gibson, a good option here for you to go get him if you want. Also, he's on his last year of his contract. He's on a contract year, meaning that he's going to do everything possible to do what's best with his opportunity to get him that contract extension. If he gets another 2-year contract extension with JD McKissic no longer there, all those targets are going to be going to Antonio Gibson, which could be exactly what we want and exactly what the community and the Washington Commanders need in the backfield. So Antonio Gibson, once again, my RB30, my community's RB32, my RB31, and a guy that is rising in my dynasty rankings. My third player on this list at the wide receiver position, and you guys may have heard me talk about this guy often, and that is Diontae Johnson, currently wide receiver 36 in the community. He is my wide receiver 33, and a lot of people off Diontae Johnson purely based off what happened last year. Okay, finished wide receiver 28, still got over 147 targets, only caught 86 of those targets, but he didn't score any touchdowns. And I think a lot of people are overlooking that and not necessarily understanding, especially how high you might have drafted him last year in your dynasty startups or even your redraft leagues, whatever leagues that you may have drafted him in. He didn't really, he didn't really give you back that true ADP value, unfortunately. And I think now with this year, and a lot of people once again are overlooking, is this offense. And I'm really projecting big things for this offense, for Kenny Pickett, this offensive line, for George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and now Diontae Johnson here coming into this year being 27 years old. Technically, the Pittsburgh Steelers do have an out on Diontae Johnson this year, but I'm not necessarily worried in a dynasty perspective. No matter where he goes, whether he gets cut and he goes to the Chiefs, whether he gets cut, goes to the Bills, or gets cut, goes to the Giants, whatever the case may be, Diontae Johnson knows how to handle a workload. This past 2 years, getting over 140 targets easily, understanding and knowing that he has the upside of being in my opinion, a low-end wide receiver one. Diontae Johnson has that opportunity. And what we saw this past year, over 26% target share, that was 13th amongst the league. Had 18% red zone targets, which was 15th amongst wide receivers. And let me tell you, this list, even though Diontae Johnson caught 0 touchdowns, he still had more targets than the following wide receivers in the red zone: Keenan Allen, AJ Brown, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, right? A George Kittle, a Drake London, a Michael Pittman, Chris Godwin, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Christian Watson. I mean, the list goes. Terry McLaurin. We can continue going. I mean, CMC, Devonta Smith, Joe Mixon, Hollywood. I mean, the list goes on. That's how much targets he gets in the red zone. Unfortunately, he just didn't catch a ball this year. And that is rare. That is unfortunate. What I do know, he's going to be get targets in the end zone, red zone this year. And he will, look, you can't really go down from 0. You can only go up, right? If you get 2 back-to-back years with no touchdowns at the wide receiver position, like Diontae Johnson getting over 140 targets, you're just unlucky. You're just, something's going on. That's not okay. Still, in my opinion, being the wide receiver one on this team, I do believe George Pickens takes a big step. I think he can transition to the wide receiver one. But I think at this year, which I do project Diontae Johnson no longer be on this team after this year, George Pickens will take the next step. But once again, Diontae Johnson being very overlooked just based off the tight end, the touchdowns that he didn't catch, but not really understanding how much he was getting targeted and looking at those targets and what that looks like. So once again, wide receiver 36 in the community, my wide receiver 33, Diontae Johnson, is rising and then being overlooked in your dynasty league. So definitely go out and try and draft him. My last guy that is rising in my rankings at the tight end position, and that is Greg Dulcich. I may be a little bit late on this train, or I just haven't seen it represented once again in our mock drafts or in dynasty startups. Going as tight end 11 on Keep Trade Cut. He is my tight end 11 as well. He was my tight end 15, but I had to rise him above some of these other guys like an Njoku. I had him after Njoku. I had him after a Chig. I had him after, you know, all these other tight ends that I just feel a lot more confident with Greg after looking into him and really understanding where this offense is kind of going. So let me remind you about Greg Dulcich here. 2022, obviously drafted this past year, 3rd round pick out of UCLA, only 23 years old. He missed the first 5 games of the season and then comes in and, you know, kind of goes crazy. He kind of goes crazy. 33 receptions, 55 targets, over 400 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaging 8.6 fantasy points per game. And that may not seem incredible. That was a tight end 10. That was the tight end 10 for that span. What happens if he played, you know, he didn't miss those 6 games, you know, because he didn't miss the first 5 games and the last game of the season. And we saw how this team turned it around in the second half with Russell Wilson. I think that's exactly what we need to look into. 5 of his 10 games, he scored over 11 fantasy points, averaging over 17% target share, which was the highest in the 2022 tight end class over all those guys in his position that year. And another thing that I really want to look into, that I did look into, was Sean Payton's success with the tight end position and how he loves to have a tight end. And yes, maybe this may be a little bit skewed because of how great these tight ends were, like the Jimmy Grahams. I guess you can say Benjamin Watson, the Jared Cook. I guess it depends on where they were in their career. But you can probably see on your screen now, look at the tight end finishes with Sean Payton. Maybe that's could be skewed as well with Drew Brees, but he has Russell Wilson. Drew Brees loved to target his tight ends. Russell Wilson, not a massive targeter in the tight ends, but maybe does that change this year with Sean Payton? There's a lot of things that can change without this system. A lot of things that can change with Russell Wilson, and we've seen and heard all the stats about or all the conversations about Russell Wilson and Sean Payton saying, you know what, we're happy to move on from him, whatever the case may be. We're going to do what's right for the team. So Russell Wilson is going to have to adapt. And once again, you can see this on your screen. Tight end 1, tight end 1, tight end 2, tight end 7, tight end 15. Well, Kobe, tight end 34. He was injured that year. That's why I have an asterisk. Benjamin, tight end 21. He comes back. Jared Cook, tight end 7. Benjamin, tight end 18. He comes back again. Adam Troutman, obviously this past year, that was an average of tight end 14. I mean, if we take away, you know, 2017 and 2021, that's a top 10 finish at the tight end position. A top 10 finish at the tight end position, and we're drafting him as a tight end 11 right now. And look, it sounds exciting because I want to put him higher, but I can't put him over Pat Freiermuth. I can't put him over, you know, Dalton or Michael Mayer or Sam Laporta. I can't put him over those guys. I just really can't right now. But I do believe there is a world where Greg Dulcich is the top 10 tight end in Dynasty, and we're just missing out on that value because of, once again, Sean Payton. And we're looking at this team and saying, well, you have Jerry Jeudy, you have Courtland Sutton, you have Marvin Mims, Tim Patrick. You know, they brought Adam Troutman from New Orleans. I'm not worried about those guys. I'm worried about Jerry. I'm not worried about Courtland. I'm not worried about Marvin Mims in his rookie year. If anything, I am seeing Jerry Jeudy, and this is what Zach's been preaching. He sees Jerry Jeudy and then Greg Dulcich being, you know, the second target on this offense, which I completely agree. I'm on board. And Javonte Williams is not going to be part of this team. At least, look, he could be, right? Reports saying that he could be ready by week 1, but let's see. Samaje Perine is going to be the lead backfield guy, lead running back as we speak right now. But Greg Dulcich, once again, my tight end 11, the tight end 11 in the community, but not being represented as a tight end 11 in the community. We see him going where Chig's going still. You know, where all these late round tight ends are going, he's going sometimes after David Njoku, sometimes after Evan Ingram. They're not drafting him as if he's a tight end 11. So all these guys aren't being represented correctly in the community in my eyes. So once again, Greg Dulcich, Deontay Johnson, Antonio Gibson, and Tua Tags are all of these guys that are rising in my fantasy rankings right now. Comment down below. Let me know which guys are rising in your rankings. And as always, it's all love.
Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.